So good evening, everyone. Thank you. What? Okay, this is very tight quarters up here. Thank you all for being here and being there. It's just nice to see all these faces, a lot of old faces I haven't seen in quite a while, and it's amazing tonight that practically every single person in the Zendo this evening is like really new to the Zendo. So I take that as a sign of health, and it's inspiring to see all these fresh faces. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Myoko. And tonight, I thought we'd talk about the lotus. So after we chant, when we're on retreats or if we're having a formal meal at the Zendo, which is called oryoki, after every meal that we eat, every single one, we always chant at the end of the meal, "May we exist in muddy water with purity like the lotus. Thus we bow to Buddha." And I guess I just have to say that with everything going on now, it's never easy for me to decide what to speak about, but for some reason, it's just with so much happening and so much of it being just so devastating on so many levels, in so many ways. I don't know, it's very humbling. But really, the water's kind of stirred up all over the world right now. The mud just seems to be everywhere, around us, above us, below us, on all sides, just kind of overwhelming mud. So what to do? Sitting here, I feel a little bit like the Shuso in their speech they give before their first talk, and they say they feel like a mosquito trying to bite an iron ball. With the world so on fire, what can we do? Am I doing enough? Perhaps you have similar questions. And I think sometimes alongside or underneath this question is perhaps another less obvious question that we may not even know that we have, which is, am I, just as I am, enough? Enough to meet myself or this world right now? There's a line in one of the dedications that we chant during service that has also particularly moved me and I would say helped me. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved and the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May we all experience the truth of enlightenment and realize the Buddha way together. So these are big statements. You know, how do we work on resolving our karma, allowing the mind flower to bloom in eternal spring? And where is this penetrating light to be found? This probably will not be a shock for you to hear, but this is actually our practice. And in Zen, it begins, not surprisingly, with our zazen, with meditation. Sometimes it can be hard or even impossible, really, to believe that this penetrating light is always there, or I should say, always right here. It's become clouded and hidden by all our myriad ideas, and particularly the most deeply embedded ones that we have about the world, about others, and the ones, again, that are often the most difficult to see about ourselves. Clouds of all shapes, kinds, and sizes. Dark, bright, airy, dense, beautiful, dangerous. Always shifting and moving. And in our meditation, we can actually see and allow these states to begin to unfold and to reveal themselves by simply watching them, by simply seeing them, becoming aware of them. Our awareness is itself actually the light. So we can become very discouraged and self-critical because we have this expectation that the sky should be clear, that our minds should be clear, that they need to be clear, and that what is wrong with me, that I have so many ideas and feelings that are actually anything but peaceful and loving. We forget that our very own minds, like the sky, actually have room for all of it, are all of it. In our zazen, we give ourselves the space in which we can actually view or experience these various states, like being tucked inside a comfortable hut, watching these various energies, like watching clouds in the sky shift and change, form and dissolve. When we're inside this hut, from the seat of our meditation or with the mind of our zazen, it actually can all become interesting. And actually, the clouds themselves are what become more interesting than those rare moments when the sky is perfectly clear. So our meditation practice is key. It's just so, so important as being the first step into looking at or seeing into ourselves, our minds, and therefore our karma. Our karma really just being all the causes and conditions and actions that have happened to us since even before we were born, and that we actually continually create in simply being alive. So being willing to see and acknowledge it is a first step towards healing, towards resolving our karma. But as we know, it's actually virtually impossible for the eyeball to fully see the eyeball, which is just one of the reasons that we actually need the world and others to see ourselves fully. And so our practice is not possible. It's not just done alone on the cushion. It's with Sangha, it's with teachers, and for the longer time that we do it, it's actually with everyone and everything in our lives. Nothing is left out. It's only through relationship and our life and activity in the world that all our stuff actually emerges, that actually we emerge. We are not separate from our stuff, much as we might like to be. And it's particularly when our buttons are pushed, when we're challenged, but also when we're simply just seen and even loved, that we come out. And this starts right when we pop out of the womb. This is what forms the clouds, the sunshine, the wind, the heat, the cold, and so forth, and so on. Our hurts, our wounds, our loves, our work. You know, I have to say that before practice and therapy, the last thing I wanted to do was to spend my time looking at my hurts and wounds, and those hurts and wounds that I inflict on others. And to be honest, you know, I can't say that I always love to do that now, especially when it does really hurt and it's really difficult. But I have definitely come to realize that this is exactly the way towards healing, and to open and to allow for change to happen. When we hide from ourselves or from others, whatever's problematic only gets more deeply entrenched and goes further underground. And then it just has a way of always coming out at all the wrong times, in the most unskillful ways that end up being very hurtful or disconnecting or shameful, which is possibly the worst feeling of all. So I'm not proposing that we just spend all day simply dwelling on what we're feeling and thinking and doing, which would be a surefire way to go mad. But we should try to stay aware of what's happening inside of us and to respond to that awareness over time. To listen to and notice the cues. Am I angry? Am I hurt? Am I scared? Am I anxious? Am I exuberant or sad? It's surprising how often we actually need to allow ourselves to reveal ourselves to ourselves. And with awareness, which is not the same thing as figuring out or thinking or even necessarily understanding. There's a Zen expression, knowing before knowing. You know, and awareness is something that happens almost before thinking, before the story, before the judgment, a kind of prelude almost. Which is not to say that thinking is bad, because it's also really very necessary. It's just not the same thing as awareness. Later, maybe not when we're on the cushion, comes all the processing from that awareness of what we might simply see. You know, how are we with others? What might I be projecting onto or inflicting onto them? So noticing, I think, how we are with others can also sometimes help us see into ourselves. If we're feeling particularly judgmental, snappy, or angry with other people, it's almost always because that's what's going on inside ourselves, what we're doing to ourselves. And it may have nothing to do with the situation at hand. So from really looking at our own pain, or our own shit, if you will, we can begin to have more understanding before judging others. And remember that everybody has a story, and everyone has their own suffering, which when we're angry is really, really easy to forget or hurt. The muddy water of life is really everywhere, inside and out. But as in the line from that dedication, the lotus uses the mud to grow and to flower. It's out of using all of this icky stuff that we actually grow and actually begin to flower. And this is what we call purification. Without mud, there would be no lotus. Not only would it not grow, it wouldn't even exist. Often the muddier the water, the more beautiful the flower. So our challenge is, can we do the same as we are living in these very, very, very muddy waters right now? Allow our own mind flower to bloom in eternal spring, using whatever difficulty or whatever merd we encounter outside, which is plentiful, and just as plentiful, whatever should arise inside to become fertilizer for purification. Our awareness is itself the penetrating light. And when we allow it to shine and don't hide from it, to hide from ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And here again, I really want to caution you to let this awareness shine without judgment. When we can just see in a very miraculous way, I think this is what becomes love. So there is only one sky of which we are all part. We all live under it. We all breathe it in and we all breathe it out. It is always the same and it is never the same. So I would just encourage us all to do the best we can in taking care of ourselves, others, in this wondrous sky of which we're all equally a part. So I'll leave us with a poem I've always loved by E.Q., a famous Zen poet. The lotus is not stained by the mud. This perfect dewdrop form, just as it is, reflects the whole body of truth.